Welcome to Show-Off Showdown! In this series, the fighters are called Show-Offs, and this is the series for the Show-Off Showdown! Now let's meet the Show-Offs for tonight's Showdown, shall we? Now, prepare to get all fired up, cause tonight we have a fiery epic battle between Dragon and Dragon Slayer! That's right, Natsu vs Spyro! Will the Dragon Slayer claim his next victim, or will he meet his match? By the way, in case you're wondering which version or incarnation of Spyro we're using for this battle, we're actually going to be using a composite of the classic Spyro and the Legend of Spyro trilogy. I put links to the analysis on both characters in the description below. Now without further ado, it's time for the Show-Off to Showdown!
Get ready for the next battle. Fight!
Dragon, huh? I'm gonna show you what an angry one looks like! You stupid dragon wannabe! This is what happens to anyone who messes with fairy tales!
Whoa! Looks like Natsu was really on fire!
Now let's discuss how and why Natsu wins this fiery epic showdown. Let's start off with who is more skilled and experienced. Now this one is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, Spyro is fairly young and doesn't have that much experience, while on the other hand, while Natsu's physical age may be 18, he is actually over 400 years old. So I think it's safe to say that Natsu definitely has more experience than Spyro. Now on a related note, being a dragon slayer, Natsu has fought against dragons before, obviously, but to be fair, Spyro has also fought against mages and wizards before, so Spyro and Natsu both have experience fighting opponents that are almost exactly like each other, and therefore they aren't really anything new to each other in terms of exactly what kind of fighters they are. No doubt that should make this category a little more fair, yet at the same time interesting. But Natsu still has more fighting experience than Spyro, so I think it's safe to say that Natsu wins this category. Now let's discuss speed. While Spyro is very fast in his own right, both on land, in the air, and even underwater, however, Natsu has proven that he can move far faster than the speed of sound. For example, Natsu has once traveled the distance of the Tower of Heaven in less than 1 second. The Tower of Heaven has been estimated to be at least 10,000 feet tall due to the thin air of cirrus clouds forming around the tower. And these clouds can only form this thin at the height of at least 10,000 feet at minimum. In order to travel a distance of at least 10,000 feet in less than 1 second, Natsu would need to be moving at the speed of about 6,800 miles per hour. Believe it or not, there are times where Natsu has even been showing moving at incredible speeds of well over 9,000 miles per hour. Not to mention, Natsu can even triple his physical stats with his Dragon Force, which applies to not only his travel speed, but also his combat speed as well. So once again, while Spyro is very fast in his own right, I think it's safe to say that the feats I've mentioned prove that Natsu is far faster than Spyro in both travel speed and combat speed. Now let's discuss durability. Now this is probably an easy one to answer. Natsu clearly has the advantage in durability. First reason being is that durability, armor, and defense are not Spyro's strongest suit. In Spyro's classic games, it would only take about a few hits to take Spyro down, and while Spyro might be able to take more punishment than that in the Legend of Spyro trilogy, Natsu can still tank much more punishment and abuse than Spyro can. In fact, despite being a dragon, Spyro can actually be harmed by the same elements he possesses, such as fire and electricity. So if Natsu absorbs and uses some of Spyro's elements against him, then things aren't going to go too well for Spyro. Now it is true that Spyro can use his wings as shields to protect himself, but it's going to be extremely hard for Spyro to block all of Natsu's attacks due to speed I mentioned earlier. I think I've said enough for this category. Now let's discuss strength. Now, this might be the only category that Spyro has the advantage over Natsu in. Now, it is true that Natsu is pretty strong. For example, Natsu once lifted a huge boulder several times his size, which has been estimated to weigh approximately 135 tons. Now, as impressively strong as that is, Spyro has demonstrated much more impressive feats of physical strength. Believe it or not, Spyro has the strength to charge with enough force to break through 10 meters of solid granite with his horns, which is the equivalent of about 8,000 tons of force. So while Natsu is very strong in his own right, Spyro clearly has the advantage in raw strength. But once again, this is probably the only advantage that Spyro has over Natsu. Now let's discuss their powers and abilities. As we all know, Natsu has the ability to consume fire, which is Spyro's main breath attack. Natsu can also consume electricity, which Spyro also possesses as well. This means that Natsu can eat and absorb any and all fire and electricity that Spyro breathes at him and use it against Spyro. Now it is true that Spyro also possesses other elements that Natsu cannot absorb, such as earth, ice, wind, water, and bubbles, apparently. But not only is Natsu fast enough to dodge and avoid pretty much all of these very short-range breath attacks, but Natsu has faced opponents in the Fairy Tail series who possess the exact same elements, and their elemental powers are probably even stronger and more effective than Spyro's. For example, Natsu has once been frozen by Silver, but that was only because it was Devil Slayer magic being used against a demon, which is something that Spyro clearly does not possess. And that's just one example. Oh, by the way, if you're confused about the bubble breath, Spyro only uses that for catching dragonflies, so his bubble breath is essentially useless in a fight, especially against someone like Natsu. Anyway, like I said before, fire breathing is Spyro's main method of attack, and fire is exactly what powers up Natsu, so Spyro would basically be feeding Natsu energy, and unfortunately, Spyro doesn't know that. Without prep time, Spyro wouldn't know that fire and electricity are exactly what makes Natsu stronger. By the time Spyro realizes that Natsu can eat fire and use it against against him in the middle of battle, it'll be too late. Now if Spyro did know that, and if he did have prep time, that he would probably be more reliant on his other elemental breaths, but even then Natsu would still have most of the advantages over Spyro. Now in terms of variety, it is true that Spyro possesses more elements than Natsu, but they're all used as mainly short-range breath attacks. While on the other hand, Natsu can use his fire and lightning elements in more ways than one, and he has dozens of different powerful fire and lightning based attacks. So I think it's safe to say that Natsu definitely has a much greater variety of attacks, powers, and abilities than Spyro. Oh, and not to mention, Natsu has incredible senses, willpower, and observation skills, which he can use to study his opponents, sense their locations, find their weaknesses, and take advantage of them, and predict his opponent's moves, which should be no problem with fighting against Spyro, since most of Spyro's attacks can often be quite repetitive and predictable. Now you're probably wondering, does Spyro have his best friend Sparx the Dragonfly for his battle? Well, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure, mainly because this is a one-on-one fight, and I really don't know if Sparx counts as outside help, or if he is essential to Spyro. Well, just to make this debate a little more fair, let's say that Spyro does have Sparx by his side for this fight. However, even if Spyro does have Sparx, it won't really make much of a difference. While Sparx could make a difference if Spyro was fighting other specific opponents, but there isn't really much that Sparx can do to help in a fight against someone like Natsu, even if it was a composite Sparx. Cause first of all, in the original Spyro game, Sparx mainly serves as Spyro's health meter, so while he could protect Spyro for certain types of harm, assuming he could find and eat enough butterflies to constantly restore Spyro's health, it still wouldn't make that much of a difference since there isn't really anything Sparx can do to prevent Natsu from landing fast, devastating, and eventually fatal blows on Spyro. Second, in the Legend of Spyro trilogy, Sparx mainly acts as a pathfinder and a comedic relief character, so if anything, Sparx will probably be a bit more of a setback than a help in a fight like this. And third, while Sparx is able to fight alongside Spyro in the Skylanders games, his only method of attack is shooting fireballs, and we all know how well that's going to turn out against Natsu. So overall, even if Spyro does have Sparx for this battle, it won't really make much of a difference. In fact, Sparx will probably be dead within minutes or even seconds due to Natsu squashing him like the bug that he is. Sure, that might possibly light a fire in Spyro's belly, literally, but even that kind of anger and determination still won't be enough for Spyro to take down Natsu. Now let's discuss their weaknesses. Now Natsu and Spyro both have some relatively similar weaknesses. Spyro and Natsu are both rather stubborn, irresponsible, and arrogant. They have little to no regard for their own safety, they hardly ever strategize, and they'd rather just rush into battle with raw force without thinking first and ask questions later. Now Spyro may have the ability to fly, but his flying capability is rather limited and inconsistent for a dragon. Now as for Natsu, he may not be able to eat his own fire, and he may be able to run out of juice if he doesn't have enough fire or lightning to consume, but he doesn't have to worry about that since Spyro is going to be breathing plenty of fire in a heartbeat, as well as lightning. Not to mention, it is true that Natsu can experience motion sickness very easily, but he doesn't have to worry about that for this battle, unless for some reason Spyro decides to pick him up and carry him around while flying, which I highly doubt he will. Not without prep time at least. Now the last thing I'd like to discuss is Natsu and Spyro in their strongest forms. In the Legend of Spyro trilogy, Spyro's strongest form is easily his dark form. Dark Spyro uses dark ether, can levitate objects around him, can use every element, and he is easily much faster and stronger than base form Spyro. Not only that, but unlike regular Spyro, Dark Spyro is also ruthless, savage, and does have a tendency to kill, especially if he loses control of this form. Now while Spyro is able to control his dark form, but he can still be consumed by the darkness if he abuses it. Now as powerful as this form is, Natsu on the other hand does have some special forms that are powerful enough to rival Dark Spyro or maybe even surpass him, such as Natsu's Dragon Force for example, which grants Natsu the power of a dragon and it enhances Natsu's physical and magical powers to far past the original levels. Not only that, but Natsu also has his Fire Dragon King mode, which grants Natsu the power of Igneal, grants a massive boost in power and speed, makes Natsu strong enough to be on par with Zeref, I hope I didn't mispronounce that, and he can completely incinerate Onksaron Black Magic in this form. Onksaron Black Magic is essentially a curse that kills anything it touches. So if Natsu's Fire Dragon King mode is able to completely incinerate Onksaron Black Magic, then I don't see why it couldn't do the same thing to the Dark Magic within Dark Spyro. I don't think I even need to mention Natsu's Demolition Fist or Fire Dragon's King Roar, which is said to be powerful enough to create city leveling explosions and take out an entire army of 900 173 soldiers in a single shot. And last but not least is Natsu's END form, which is arguably the most comparable form to Dark Spyro. As you would have guessed, END is much faster, stronger, and more powerful than base form Natsu, and just like Dark Spyro, END is much more ruthless and savage than regular Natsu. Not to mention, he also wields Dark Fire, so there's another similarity. Anyway, END was able to curb stomp Dimeria in Fight Grey to a standstill. It's gonna be pretty hard for even Dark Spyro to compete with that kind of power. Now on another note, it is true that Spyro has a special ability called Dragon Time, which allows Spyro to slow down time, which might help him with the speed problem he'll face while fighting Natsu. However, believe it or not, Natsu's END form can actually walk through divine time-stopping magic, which essentially makes Spyro's Dragon Time completely useless against Natsu. I think I've said enough. So overall, while Spyro only has the advantage in raw physical strength, Natsu clearly has the advantage in just about every other category, including skill and experience, durability, speed, power, combat variety, etc. And once again, Natsu can consume all fire and electricity that Spyro breathes and use it against him. So in the end, Spyro got fired. Okay, I'll admit, that was terrible. How about Spyro's head will look good on Natsu's wall? Nah, that just sounds dark. The winner of this battle is Natsu. Now, like I said before, for this battle, I was using a composite of the classic Spyro and Legend of Spyro trilogy. Now, if you want to see Natsu take on the strongest and most powerful incarnation of Spyro, which would be Eon's Elite Spyro from the Skylander series, then let me know in the comments below. Or as a second option, if you want to see a 2-on-2 rematch between Spyro and Cinder versus Natsu and Ursa Scarlet, then let me know in the comments below and we'll see what happens in the future.
Got any ideas for Show-Off Showdown? Then let me know in the comments below, and hopefully, I just might do them. Now stay tuned for the next episode of Show-Off Showdown!